Hi there, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jackie and I create art with my sea glass. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about using driftwood because I have a great little supply of driftwood here. I love going to the beach, love picking up sea glass, love picking up all sorts of beach treasures. And whenever I see an interesting little piece of driftwood, I tend to pick it up. Sometimes I pick up big pieces too, but they're too big to put in my art. But little pieces in particular that have an element of interest, I often will pick up and stick them in my bag and carry them home, and they will often find their way into my art. So today I'm going to show you some interesting pieces of driftwood, give you a few ideas of what to look for, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of examples of how I've taken some of these small pieces of art that has been created by nature and incorporated them into my pieces of sea glass mosaic art just to add an element of interest. So when you're at the beach, you can basically pick up whatever you want. It's totally your choice. It's whatever appeals to you. But when I'm looking for driftwood, there are three things that I would look for. Number one, I want something small, like small enough to be included in a piece of art. Number two, I want it to be super smooth. So I'm not going to pick up a piece of wood that's, kind of rough and not well finished. It has to have, to me, some evidence that it's been in the water a long time, it's been tossed around by the waves a lot, and it's super smooth and driftwoody. And the third thing I often look for is a shape that's interesting. Like here's a really cool shape. To me, that looks like the beak of a heron. It's got the big long beak, it's got the eye, it's really kind of cool. So a cool shape is the third thing that I look for. So I'm going to give you a close-up view of a bunch of my pieces of sea glass that have made their way home with me, and then I'll show you how I put them in a number of sea glass mosaic pieces. So this will give you an idea of the type of pieces I tend to pick up when I'm at the beach. We get a fair amount of driftwood at our beach, so I don't pick up everything for sure. I just pick up pieces that are kind of interesting to me, and I think, oh, maybe sometime I'll fit those into a piece of art somewhere. A few here that are kind of particularly interesting to me. I don't very often get pieces that are totally square, so that's kind of interesting. Super smooth piece there. I often pick up ones that look like they have an eye in them. That one's a little bit flimsy because it's cracked, so it might not get used. I like ones that are really crooked and knobby like that. This one's cool because it has a hole in it. That is definitely going to get used. And this one's kind of cool. It's fat and chunky. Driftwood can be so interesting. So I don't want to pass it up because it might just add that little bit of different detail into one of my sea glass pieces that I wouldn't otherwise have to work with. See, look at that. That's so fascinating to me. So in this sea glass mosaic, you'll see that the paddle is a piece of driftwood. When I found that piece of driftwood, I knew exactly what it had to be. So I built the whole sea glass mosaic all around the piece of driftwood. So this is a really cool piece of driftwood with a hole in it, and I think it provides a really good perch for this nukshuk to stand on in this small 8x10 sea glass mosaic. So I've used 3 small pieces of driftwood, and they're acting as fence posts in this small sea glass mosaic, which I really quite like, and they're kind of cool little pieces of wood, and they add an element to the mosaic that just makes it a little bit more interesting. So here are 3 even bigger pieces of driftwood that work really well for these 3 shorebirds to stand on in this 8x10 sea glass mosaic. I love these pieces of driftwood. They all have tiny little holes in them from something that's bored into them, or just the driftwood or the wood that has weared away after being in the water for so long. So these work really well. And I really like this little piece of driftwood when I found it. It's a little branch from a tree, and it works really well in the foreground of this small 8x10 sea glass mosaic of the Confederation Bridge. And it provides a great little perch for three little shorebirds to stand on. So in this sailboat mosaic, if I zoom in really close in the very center, you can see I've used a piece of driftwood for the hull of the boat in my center sailboat, and another tiny piece of driftwood for the hull of the boat in that olive green sailboat. And when you zoom back out, you see you're not really going to notice that that's driftwood in all that sea glass unless you zoom in super close. If you look at this under the water sea glass mosaic, there's a whole lot of detail going on. And if you look really close, down at the bottom, there's quite the cool piece of driftwood that the inukshuk is standing on. In this large heron sea glass mosaic, you can see that I've used 3 pieces of driftwood down here in the corner for the birds to be sitting on. So here are a couple of examples of using the pieces of driftwood as the base for your little design. This is using pebbles. I made a piece of driftwood with 3 feet on it. And here's another little piece of driftwood with turtles on it, 3 turtles. Kind of a cool use for some of your beach treasures. And here's another example of using the driftwood as a base for your little design. Here I've made a tree and a snowman and an angel, all on pieces of driftwood. And then you put some string on them and you can hang them on the tree for Christmas ornaments. So in this fairly large sea glass mosaic, you have to look really closely to see that the boat in this sailboat out on the water is actually made of driftwood. So in this underwater sea glass mosaic, you can see that at the very base of the mosaic is a piece of driftwood standing straight up. Kind of adds a bit of an abstract nature to this piece. So this is a fairly large mosaic with tons of detail. So if you look close, you can see that the bottom of the sailboat is actually a piece of driftwood. And I've also used 3 little pieces of driftwood for fence posts off in one corner. And in this large bridge piece, I was looking for something interesting for the inukshuks to sit on. So I found this really smooth piece of driftwood. I like this. So thanks very much for joining me for this video on how to use driftwood in your sea glass mosaic art. I hope you have some good luck finding some really cool pieces where you are. And until next time, happy sea glass hunting. And I would add some happy driftwood hunting in there as well.